to Chaotic Risk TV. My name is Jason J. Rock Houston. Today we got two of the members of the band Wing of Steel. We got a guitarist Parker Halub and lead singer Leo Unnermark. Hope I pronounced that right, Leo. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Just
Happy to
cool,
be
man.
here.
How about yourself?
Yeah, great. And now I've interviewed Parker previously once before over the phone, the old school way. So doing it the first time, we started doing these Zoom interviews. They've been a truckload of fun. So it's great to be able to see you guys and talk to you like this. Let me ask you, before you got on, Parker, me and Leo were kind of talking a little about the fact that despite the fact of not having a record label, you guys are kind of your own label, which I think is great because the CD has been selling out, which means anytime a CD sells, it goes right back into the band.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it is certainly a thing where you're with the CDs in particular. We are kind of limited to how many we can do because I mean, you should see it because we ordered a new batch, and I mean, we ordered there's these big boxes. They're gonna be like stacked up. I'm like, I don't have any room to keep all these CDs, and then
it's in a way a good problem to have because I was reading on your Facebook page. That's where I saw this. Telling people that we just got a new batch of CDs printed up. They're on the way. Probably take 2 to 3 weeks for you to get your CD in the mail. And so there's definitely a demand. And why I want to talk to you guys is there are a truckload of bands, especially established bands, even bands that got maybe 2 or 3 albums out, are like, people aren't buying CDs anymore. Why go to the trouble of printing up a CD? Even shows, people don't buy a lot of CDs. But I dig the fact you guys are a new band and you're going to the trouble putting out a physical CD. I'm an old school guy, so I mean I love to have that physical CD in my hand and look at the artwork. And at the end of the day, when you print up a CD, I imagine it's like an accomplishment. Like, this is our work. This is what we spent all these time writing these songs and creating these songs to be what they are.
Well, so I'll throw in real quick actually just to. I mean, the thing with the CDs is like we put out the EP last year, and then me and Leo were thinking, we're like, oh, we probably should have CDs, so we printed like 200 of them or whatever, very small amount, and then the demand just kept like, we're like, holy shit, like, I mean, it makes if you look at our audience from like a demographic perspective, it makes sense because a lot of people in that age range, like that's when they were young and listening to all these other great bands that we listen to as well, like it was all vinyls and CDs, and like the power of a physical copy is people haven't forgotten that. Like we are a prime example that you can get a band and people still want the physical, totally.
Even if you look at the way vinyl's kind of made a comeback, I mean, even I don't even have a turntable, but I'm talking to people that like me, don't have a turntable, and they're buying this vinyl stuff just because of the beautiful artwork, because of a nice packaging. People, I mean, a vinyl, sometimes depending on what it is, you'll pay as much as like maybe $30-$35. But I think people, they get something a little extra, they got to get a nice package, something they can hold and look at, they're willing to pay it.
The vinyl is a very personal experience. You get closer to the band in that sense. There's always going to be like that. Nothing beats the physical in your hand. And it's also it's a collector's item. I'm sure there are people who put it on, spin it, and listen to it that way, and but in order to like get to the same kind of sound quality that you're able to get online and digitally these days, you need a great setup. And everything needs to be pristine. So I think it's more so, it's a collector's object, and you feel part of the band more so, and in a sense you are.
Yeah, but before we even get into the full-length album, Gates of Twilight, and before we even get into the music, I got to talk about the beautiful artwork, the beautiful album cover. Who designed that?
So it was the same guy, and I have him printed nice behind me here. It was Mr. Spencer Caligiuri. So he's a tattoo artist who's out here in Thousand Oaks, which is the area of LA that we live in. But yeah, he did the EP, and we just said, yeah, dude, we had a same kind of process for the EP. We had like a a rough idea for the concept, and he brought it to life,
Yeah,
man.
I'm making a bit of a prediction here because I know you guys haven't been around all that long, but beautiful album covers like that, and even just the band's logo. I could see, eventually like running into a fan and having Wings of Steel or even the album cover, tattooed on them.
I'm the first one actually, but
Wow, I love that. Yeah, be proud of
yeah.
your band. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the ultimate self promotion.
Yep, yep.
Great. In a recent interview that was done with Spencer, actually, he talks about the process too of how he drew up the album cover artwork, and it was while listening to the music. So I think that's another thing that greatly impacts the result of the artwork.
Yeah. And so Parker, I'm just amazed at your, guitar playing and the songwriting on the album. Let's talk about some of your guitar heroes growing up. Who are the guys that influenced you?
I mean, this is always a tough question because it's a long list, and it's a lot of I take a lot of little things from a lot of people. Usually my go-to answer is, I'll always say John Sykes, because he's like, he's a complete package, man. He's got his chops are incredible, his feel is incredible, his songwriting is incredible, his tone is incredible. That dude kicks ass across the board. But I mean, he's not the only guy. I really like Michael Schenker a lot too. Neil Schon a lot's great. John Norum from Europe is great. Marty Friedman's pretty cool. I mean, I take a lot of little bits and pieces from a lot of different
I
players.
can see that because all those guys, interesting thing is not only are they great guitar players, but they're great songwriters. I mean, people think of John Norm, of course, from Europe, but he did a couple albums with Don Dokken, some great solo albums that people should really check out. Marty Friedman, interestingly enough, a lot of people when they hear him, they think immediately Megadeth, but they don't realize all the great solo albums he put out. And the thing is with Marty, he's really been immersed in the Japanese culture, living in Japan for like last 30 years or so. But I hear next year, he's getting ready to make a comeback, in America. So we look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how about you, Leo? Who are the singers that kind of influenced you to do what you guys are doing now?
I mean, there's a distinction to be drawn between influences and inspirations.
There you go.
In terms of like influences, I guess I grew up on a lot of early blues, so I think that's kind of my main influence that has driven my vocal. And then along the way, I've picked up so much inspiration from vocalists such as Paul Rogers and David Coverdale, great example.
Interesting. Yeah, Coverdale. I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Ronnie James Dio is another great one, especially in terms of storytelling and stuff like that. Huge inspiration for me.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk about Ronnie. He's one of my all-time favorite singers for the very fact that you mentioned. I mean, great lyric writer, full of great imagery. If you listen to any of the lyrics, Dungeons and Demons and Dragons, and I think that, believe it or not, I think the Sabbath era, but I'm really a huge fan of. I think Ronnie James Dio's era of Sabbath is my favorite, and people forget, back in 1980 when Ozzy was no longer in the band, there was that fear for a minute, like, oh my God, who are they going to get to replace Ozzy? And interestingly enough, they're totally two different types of singers. But I've heard Geezer talk over years, on those classic Ozzy albums. He was the one that wrote all the lyrics, amazingly enough. And he's like, when we got Ronnie, I know that responsibility no longer need to fall on me, because how could I even compete with what he was doing,
Yeah, it was a machine that fit in really well wherever he went, and he totally, an amazing artist, amazing songwriter.
And it's interesting. I could kind of hear your if you want to call it inspiration or influence of David Coverdale in your voice. I could kind of hear he's a great vocalist, and like a lot of people, I first became aware of Coverdale, through like Whitesnake and the Slide It In album, and it was only years after that I realized, oh wait a minute, that Deep Purple album from 1973, Burn, he was a singer on that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, Burn and Come Taste the Band, amazing albums, just tremendous voice, man. And even his solo albums, I know he has this solo album called North Winds that I listen to a lot. It's a little more towards like soul and even gospel and stuff like that, but with big rock influences in there. And it's just great, man. It's totally.
In fact, there is I think it's that album or maybe the second album after that. It features a song. You can find this on YouTube later if you want to go research it. The song is called Give Me Kindness, and it features Ronnie and Wendy Dio on vocals.
On the backing vocals. Yeah, I remember that.
That's a
And I was
nice
like,
deep cut, yeah.
yeah, it's a deep cut. I don't know why that wasn't a bigger hit, but even as a fan kind of discovering that, I'm like, wow, what a great track that was.
Yeah, great knowledge there, Jason. That's a pretty hidden gem right there.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up when I get a chance, because a lot of people don't know it.
Absolutely.
And you know, I would say Wings of Steel, you know, you guys, it's where are you from? Because like just listening to the music, it has kind of a European vibe to it. And obviously you guys aren't from Europe, but I was just kind of curious. Like it's kind of got like an Iron Maiden element, kind of old school traditional metal.
A lot of, we're talking influences, we're talking about individual musicians, but also, it's also bands. And
Yeah,
I think
sure.
between me and Leo, a large portion of these bands that we've been influenced by, they're all from the UK, and they're from that European sound. I'm talking about bands like Maiden or Sabbath or
I get that.
Priest or Deep Purple, Diamond Head. A lot of these bands are from out there. So I guess maybe that has something to do with it, but
Yeah.
we're here, even though Leo's from Sweden and he
Okay.
lives in Sweden most of the year. We met out here in Los Angeles, and that's pretty much where we do.
Yeah, that's why, you know, I was asking because when Leo speaks, I hear like very slight accent. I wasn't sure. I mean, it's not really deep, so you can't really tell. You do kind of sound like you've been living here in the States for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to shake it entirely, and it's not that I'm trying to either.
No, I get you. I get you. Yeah.
You spend a lot of time in America around people who are, native speakers, especially around California, where you tend to slur your words a little bit. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's just what it is.
And how long have you been? How long have you been living in the States? I mean, did you leave Sweden when you were very young, or?
No, I moved out to LA when I was back in 2018, Christmas 2018, right around that time. So not too long, honestly.
And did you all have any kind of musical career back in Sweden, or did you kind of really get your start here?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had some bands here that I started playing with, mainly like cover bands, tribute bands. But I did have my one project that I kind of took forward, did some acoustic shows, stuff like that. But the goal was always to kind of get out and try and find that one ultimate.
Yeah. And Parker, it's very interesting that you bring up John Sykes, because of course people know him from Whitesnake and Thin Lizzy. A lot of people forget about Blue Murder, and so while he's a great gifted songwriter and guitarist, he's also an equally talented singer. I never understood why he didn't like kind of do more, but I guess when you got the royalties to kind of live off of that Whitesnake album, you got the right to kind of retire and do what you want, right?
Blue Murder actually has significance to our band. You can talk about that part.
Very much. Well, the thing is that me and so when me and Leo met, we were both going to this music school here in LA. And we both kind of went there thinking that, because it was, you hear about it back in the day, it was this big rocker thing, whatever. And like, we go there, there's not really a lot of people. So inevitably me and Leo we cross paths. We're just talking, and I'm like, yeah, the band Blue Murder. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, this is like the first person I met who knows this band. Because most people my age, they don't know any of this shit. They're another
Carmine talk over years that him and Tony Franklin want to get the band back together. John Sykes is a holdout. Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other thing. But Blue Murders, it's a very special band for us. And even though it might not be obvious, it has a very big
I can kind of hear it. That's and the thing is, it is a very special band when you consider the fact that they just released 2 albums, but all these years later, people still have that killer debut album, and how the band had so much promise, and it's got to be a great feeling for John Sykes, especially being the front man and the songwriter behind the band. Just that one album, and people are still talking about it, decades later.
Yeah, great music. It stands the test of time,
And talking about Wings of Steel, I really think this is a killer debut album, and back when we were growing up, guys, there's a handful of these what I call killer debut albums. Some come to mind like Motley Crue's Too Fast for Love, Rats Out of a Cellar, the first Iron Maiden album, the first Holy Diver by Dio. I could name a truckload of them. You know, the very first Van Halen album. These are albums that really kind of made a statement. I mean, even you look at the very first Van Halen album, and they did their great cover of "You Really Got Me." There's people listening to this that have no idea who the Kinks are, but that was a Kinks song. When they hear "You Really Got Me," they really think it's a Van Halen song, and that's real huge credit to Van Halen and what they did.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many great debut albums, you know, and you mentioned a couple of them for sure.
And very much, like a lot of times bands will cover a song like that, and they really make the song their own. They really own it, and that's a hard thing to do. But I think, I predict 10 years from now, just based on the response of how this album is selling, this is going to be one of those debut albums people mention, and I think that you guys also deserve to be mentioned. And there's a handful of bands, like I said, that I could kind of point to and say these are kind of maybe the next generations of stars. I think Wings of Steel, one of my favorite bands, the Dead Daisies. I mean, I think the last decade they just put out a great best of album. The first 10 years of the band, and I think in the first 10 years that's the band that's really kind of made their mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and thank you for that. I'm glad you dig it, but I think at the end of the day, we just write the music that we love, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. We're not trying to
be anybody else.
We're not trying to be anybody, or we're not trying to recreate anything. I think that's like a common thing we get accused of because of our influences are all from that era, and don't get us wrong, like that's the music we love, and we love
Sure.
all that stuff. But it's I think we're carrying that torch forward as opposed to just trying to live up to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing I can tell. Let's now start talking about some of the songs. I mean, see, it's you guys got the whole package. I mean, like talking just about the album cover. People see that, it gets their attention. It makes you want to go out and buy the album. Oh, this looks cool. I mean, kind of like when I saw Number of the Beast for the very first time. I was very much a young kid, maybe about 9 or 10, and I don't know what the hell this is, but it looks so cool. I got to get it, and see, that's the thing. In a word, I would say your music sounds epic. It's larger than life. You definitely hear some of those influences, but I think the thing about this band is you've got your own original thing going, which is very hard to do, because so oftentimes, maybe you are influenced by Maiden and Sabbath. Like, oh, it's got a Sabbathy Maiden vibe. But there's so much more to this music because, you guys are the songwriters. And
yeah, totally. I mean, it's carrying off what I was saying earlier. It's we have a lot of influences, and
sure.
I think because we don't necessarily put ourselves in a box and say, okay, we want to try to recreate this specific sound or this, like we just write the music we want to write. One day we're listening to some, maybe it's some Deep Purple thing or some Dio thing from the 70s. We're like, that's cool. Let's see if we have our own version of that. The next thing we're listening to some underground thing from the early 90s or something that was really good, but nobody heard about. And we're like, that was a cool idea. Maybe, and then the two things like mix, and it's like, what the fuck is happening? But it's
and you
cool.
Mentioned Deep Purple. Great example of that is like they got a song like Smoke on the Water. I got to ask you, Park, is that one of the first solos you learned to play? I ask because that's like one of the probably the most popular riff that the guitar players ever learn.
Well, actually, I've never bothered to go in and
learn it.
Like learn the solo, but the riff. The first thing, anytime you take a guitar lesson or somebody gives you a piece of guitar advice, especially when you're like an 8 or 9-year-old kid, you're like, what's something they show you how to play the riff for Smoke on the Water? So.
That or Stairway to Heaven, I hear, and I seen recently where Richie Blackmore was talking about the song and its popularity, and he's like, yeah, a lot of people like Smoke on the Water. I like it, but it's not my favorite song. It's interesting to see somebody say that, like, you had such a huge hit, and the fans reacted different, and maybe even he did. Maybe, like, I'm sure that after all these years, must be tired of playing it, right? But it's the riff that keeps on playing,
Absolutely.
And so again, these songs sound so epic, so larger than life. even the title of the album, which I know is the title of one of the songs, Gates of Twilight. I'm like, man, that sounds metal. That sounds interesting. That sounds like something that came out of the Bible.
Yeah, and I mean, in a sense, it did. I mean, it's a lot of the album is based on universal kind of conflicts between, the balance between the one and the other, and kind of how they create the one, and the Gates of Twilight is kind of when you're standing on the one side of it, looking into the other, and kind of coming to realizations. And from the same light, that's why we like for people to make up their own interpretations of the lyrics, because we all pave our own story and we all go down our own way.
And I dare say, Leo, that's where even like maybe a Dio influence comes in, because you look at all this, like his lyrics, like I said, is a lot of imagery, and it's more than just making love in the backseat of your car. Really
yeah, kind of. And I think it's one of those things. The more I kind of mature into the whole way of writing and stuff like that, like I can't write songs like that. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't come from the right place. It's
so. Yeah, I want to ask you, Leo, about the song "Garden of Eden," because I really love your vocals on that.
Mm-hmm. It's a fun song, It's one of those things where, coming off of the EP, we love all the songs on there, but at the same time, I want to be able to use more of my lower register as well, because it's all fun and good singing up there and stuff. But
I mean, the vocal you deliver, it is as a listener, it's very hypnotic. I'm paying attention to what you're doing vocally, and it's like nothing I've ever heard. So, thumbs up on that. Leather and Lace, that's another one that may be my favorite song on the whole album.
Cool. Yeah, it's a fun song. It started off with a pretty simple idea of just wanting one of those bluesy grooves, pretty stripped down, and just kind of amplified with that whole spirit of early 80s kind of blues metal, blues rock.
I mean, another track, Into the Sunlight, epic, larger than life, melodic metal. See, I would say that's maybe the most different sounding song of the album. Everything is kind of traditional, kind of sounding metal, classic, old school, but this has got a little more melody to it.
Yeah, I mean that song actually, a lot of the songs on the album, they had long journeys from where they started to how they ended up on the record. But that one was really cool because it was probably back in 2020 or 2021. Leo was sitting with the keyboard, and he came up with like this goofy like melody thing, and I was like, dude, this is awesome, man. And then he was back in Sweden for a bit. So I sat down and I was like, because we had jammed it out a bunch, and there was a bunch of different ideas that came from it. So I kind of just, I said, fuck it, one night, and I like laid out a thing for it, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. This has some ideas to it. And then we had that demo sitting, and then when we went to go and write the album last year, it was like the second song that we wrote. And so we kind of just we went in there again, and we basically got it to the structure that it is now. And yeah, it's an awesome song, and also it's a great song to play live as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear you guys as a metal band are incorporating like keyboards into the music, Leo, because to me, the ultimate keyboard hero has always been like the late great John Lord of Deep Purple. I hear people always say keyboards suck and don't belong in rock music. I tend to disagree, but I say, well, you put on any Deep Purple album and you listen to what John Lord did, and then you tell me keyboards suck.
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as what does and what does not belong in heavy metal. The awesome thing about heavy metal is that there's no rules to writing it, and that's what you got to stick to. And if no matter whether your inspiration comes out through the keyboard or through the guitar or through the bass, it all serves one purpose, and that's all that matters.
And I was also being that you're from Sweden, I was curious. You were at all a fan growing up of the band Europe, because again, people make jokes about the final countdown, but that's the one keyboard guitar riff that keeps on paying. I mean, they get gigs offered like every New Year's Eve just because of that one song.
Yeah, I mean, it's growing up in Sweden, it's obviously the biggest rock band we have here. So I think they played more outside of Sweden though as I was growing up, but recent years they've been playing a lot here as well.
I'd probably say Europe and probably Ink Malmsteen, biggest thing to come out of Sweden. Would you agree?
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean, he's a guitar sensation, and you know, you can say whatever you want about him, but I mean, yeah, I think it's between him and Europe probably.
I mean, he's still doing it, right? So something to be said for that. So what are your guys' plans? Like, have you been doing shows to support the album? Is there plans to take it on tour?
So right now, actually, we had the album came out back on May 19th. So we did a release party show right after that, on the 20th, and then we did a headline show at the Whiskey A Go Go back on July 5th. But we were talking about earlier about our split living situation. So just to sum it up really quick, Leo basically he had to move back to Sweden when his visa ran out back in fall of 2021.
Okay.
So since then, our schedule is he basically lives there, and then he can come out here for basically less than 90 days, and that's when we do all of our recording, and that's when we do the shows that we can. Okay. So that said, he's back in Sweden right now.
Wow.
But our current plan is we have a couple little, like, we have a music video coming out very soon. We have live footage from the whiskey coming out very soon.
Wow.
And then also towards the end of this year, we're going to have our full LP vinyls for both Gates of Twilight and Wings of Steel available.
What a way to end the year, you guys.
But,
so Leo,
but I'm not done yet though. So
sorry.
next plan is we're going over to Germany next year to we're gonna do a tour basically. So, and we're scheduled for Keep It True Festival, and that's kind of what this all sprung around. But basically we're booking all that out right now, and yeah.
We're actually scheduled for another 2 festivals. We can't divulge the names yet because they haven't announced it, but yeah, there's going to be some fun in Europe.
That's great. So, I mean, that's another sign that you guys have kind of made it. The fact that you played the legendary Whiskey A Go Go in Los Angeles, what was that like for you that night?
It's great. I mean, the thing is that as a band, partially because of the visa and the geographic issue, like we haven't been able to play live that much. But you know, when you're a kid and you're sitting, you know, you're 10 years old and you're like, I want to be a musician when I grow up. Like that's the best. Playing live is the best part. In this,
I gotta tip my
we
hat to you
write
guys.
the
Yeah, I got to tip my hat to you guys because you know, in spite of that, you're not letting it get you down. People are continuing to order this killer debut album we've been talking about. So it doesn't seem to be stopping you. I love that, and a lot of bands might let it get in their way, but I think this kind of attitude, it's only up from here.
That's dope. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we love doing it. You know, that's what it comes down to, and it's you know, we have these things where it's you know we're independent, so we finance everything ourselves, and then we have the visa thing, so we can the amount of time we have to physically be on the same continent and work together is limited, but you know, it's just it all works out, you know, and it's been a great so far. It's been a great response, and that response is just growing. So.
And I guess the very last thing I want to ask you guys before I let you go today is you were mentioning meeting up at a school. I mean, was it instantaneously you knew that, hey, there's a chemistry here, there's something between us? Did you feel that spark right away between you and Leo?
Yeah, I think it starts out on the personal level, and a lot of the times, you know, if we're both musicians, it's going to translate to any kind of creative source that you have going on. So I think it was pretty instantaneous for both of us.
I think you guys could be the modern day metal version of Lennon and McCartney. Who knows? Because the songs are just that good, you know. So you delivered the metal goods to your fans. So I just want to say you guys are welcome back anytime. I'd love to talk to you once your new video comes out. We could have you back and talk about that. And I'm all about spreading the love for this killer debut album, Gates of Twilight. I urge people to check it out, but you don't need me because you're selling out of it. So. Great job, guys. Great talking to you. Have a nice day.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, man.
Anytime. Bye-bye. And the video interview we just did should be going up probably next week. I'll let you know for sure when I have a date for that, okay? And feel free to share it.
Sweet. Yeah, we will.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
We're going, man.